What do I call you?
You can call me Quinn or Xanth, either one.
Quinn.
I don't care.
Okay. Perfect,
Yeah.
man.
How about you?
Fran. I go by Fran. Yep. F-R-A-N.
Alright, sounds
Fran.
good. Is that short for like Francis or something?
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly right, man. It's dead on.
Ah, cool.
But yeah, man, I wanted to just make sure I told you again, though, man. I am super appreciative of like specifically your first video. I haven't got to watch the full Scoom interview yet, but the first one, I just think it's something that's like super needed. It's not attention seeking. It's none of that shit that they're talking about. It's a threat almost, right? It's almost, there's a lot happening with people trying to portray something that's not actually true, and everybody's kind of faking it. It's very interesting, and obviously we can get into that, but I want to make sure I told you off the top, though, that I thought it was an excellent video. I listened to all 23 minutes of it or what have you, and I thought for the most part the analysis of it is very good too, because I've been with the Knights since February, so part of my job, even though I'm not the tactician coach or anything like that, I played PUBG Mobile now. I was in the top 100. I actually ranked top 100 for NA and duos last season 1. So I know enough about the game to be dangerous, right? But I certainly am not on a professional level. But it was cool to hear you break that down, because I thought it was spot on. Like the teams you mentioned, especially TSM. TSM is definitely full-time streaming. It's not at least lately, it hasn't been a competitive org seriously in the PUBG scene, and they're playing. I believe they're playing. I can't even tell you. Like they don't play half the leagues almost. At least that's what it feels like. Like I don't even know if they're in GLL. So I just thought it was a very well done video, and I want to make sure I gave you props off the top.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot. I mean, that's pretty much exactly why I made the video, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of funny because, like I kind of mentioned to you before when we were chatting, it's like, probably 98% of the feedback I got from like people in the top level and below was like, the information is like good and it needs to get out there, right? Some people didn't really like the way I said it, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like the truth is the truth, right? And only a couple people, really had a hard time handling
For
it.
God's sake, you're dead on. I mean, I was told, and again, I mean, we can get into the different tweets or whatever. It doesn't matter, But I essentially said, the Knights are playing very consistently right now, and it's because if you look at the scene, there's a lot of complaining happening in the EU scene, and I happen to think that there's a correlation between losing and complaining. It's a chicken and the egg. I don't know what comes first, but they seem to go hand in hand. I made that. No specific names, no specific teams, and I've been told by almost everybody, including internal from my own organization. And again, we're an independent company. I am not a part of the Knights.
Right. Yeah,
I've been told, hey, temper it down. You're 100% correct. You're 100% right. I agree with you. Everybody knows that you're putting out great content, but it's just it's too harsh. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I didn't say anything. So it's just the scene, man, especially in the EU. It's very sensitive. And I understand, it's competitive, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree to change what I think needs to be done in order for teams to be successful. I think it's bad that teams complain a lot. I think it's a really bad idea. I also think it's a bad idea if we have any sort of environment where we want to suppress the truth because we're scared of how it affects other teams, for God's sake. I don't give a shit about Rogue or FaZe. I'm worried about getting the Knights winning. We haven't won shit in actual LAN event money. We play well, but we sure as hell haven't won nothing. So I'm trying to get us there, and I'm just not interested in worrying about, oh my God, all these other teams now are so upset. To me, it's an interesting sport right now. It's very early developing, and some things are definitely going to shake up and change, and that's going to be one of it. You can't have entitlement, and you can't have sensitivity in something that's competitive and for cash.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I feel like so many of these top level pros are just like, their egos are just so small that if you even say the tiniest bit of criticism that could even potentially be interpreted to be thrown their way, they'll just instantly go in full defensive mode instead of trying to I don't know, take it in stride or maybe get better because of it, which is what you would expect from most competitors in other sports, right?
Absolutely.
And I can give you a good example of someone that actually did do this. So, my video, I criticized NIP, G2, Evil Geniuses, and TSM mainly, right?
Yep.
So, of that group, the only two that I really got much feedback from was, EG Watts, who obviously said that I was just calling out his team to try to I don't know, degrade them or something. I was looking for attention and fabricating evidence against them, which I'm not, by the way. You can look on Wikipedia or the PUBGpedia or whatever. And then the other guy, I got a response from, not a direct response, but sort of an indirect response, was actually NIP's Hollywood, who just followed me on Twitter afterwards and never actually said anything, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm guessing he watched the video and that's why he followed me.
Right.
But the fact that he's not like out there like trying to say that I'm wrong or anything is just but the fact that he watched the video and isn't saying that is pretty indicative of the fact that he's willing to take criticism and get better. And I respect the hell out of that, right? Because I mean, I played NIP pretty hard in that video,
Well,
honestly.
dude,
So
PUBG is my first game that I'm really getting into esports. By trade, I'm an exercise science professional. I have a second. My main business is doing personal training. We deliver to people's homes here in Pittsburgh, and that's my main bread and butter. But mental fitness is something that I was thinking about for like 8 to 12 months and like trying to really figure it out, because I looked at people and like someone would come to me and says, well, I'm very unhappy. If I lose 20 pounds, everything will be gravy. Well, they'd lose 20 pounds and then they're still upset, right? They're still sad. And I'm like, oh shit, like there's something more to this about happiness in life than just the physical. And that's when I was like, okay, it's something here with mental, like mindset, mentality, like this thing is real. And so I was thinking of ways to like actually integrate it. And so I got pretty lucky and met with the Knights a couple of times, pitched them my idea, and they bought it, and I'm integrated completely throughout their entire organization. We have one employee in there, and the thing is, I remember very specifically. Oh, let me ask you this actually. Because I think in your Twitter profile it mentioned you were like a coach. How did you feel people received your feedback as a coach? Did you have to find unique ways to actually help them get better at the game because you found they were too sensitive, or the people that you worked with were mainly pretty okay in that category?
So I've actually been really lucky and blessed so far with all the teams that I've coached, because everyone has been so open to feedback and just loving what I have to say to them. They can usually see that, the feedback I give them is pretty accurately based in facts and I'm not just kind of pulling stuff out of my ass, right? So I
Yeah.
think that makes it really easy for them to kind of like review it themselves and see like, oh, okay, yeah, we did fuck up here or something like that, right? So no, everyone that I've worked with so far has been absolutely amazing, and I'm so thankful for that. But if I run into someone that's going to be, really resistant to change and feedback, uh, I'm not quite sure how I'll respond to that yet because I haven't
Yeah.
been put in the situation yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough, and that's when so since PUBG is kind of the first foray for us into the mental fitness and into the esports scene, dude, I didn't even know who the hell NIP was for the longest time. Like, here it is being like a pretty decent organization, obviously, and their PUBG team was so non-existent that like I remember people were almost every game that I would watch where it was like promotional rounds or like really early qualifiers. Almost every commentator or caster was like, "Oh, yo, watch out for NIP," and I'm like, "Who the hell are these people that they keep saying that?" And then you'd watch them get 9th, 10th, 11th in these lobbies that were very weak to begin with. I was like, "What the hell people keep talking about them for?" And then like I learned over time. So that's interesting that your podcast, that was like one of the first things you talked about, because it's so true, and like nobody wants to probably say that. It's just it's fascinating.
No, yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. It's really funny because I mean that's well, like one of the two reasons I made the video, right? Is because the perception of some of these like teams and orgs is so biased just based off of the name, right? Uh, so I mean, like I'm saying, it's really misleading as a viewer when you're watching these events and if you don't know the history of the scene, right? Because I've been watching competitive since the beginning, so I have an idea of the history of the scene. But people maybe like you who are coming in a little more recently might not have any idea about these teams or maybe even the history behind the organizations themselves, right? So as a viewer,
Dude,
you're
you're so
watching it,
dead
and these
on.
commentators are saying, yeah, you got to watch out for, TSM, G2, NIP, whoever they're talking about, right? These guys are, these guys have been in the scene for a long time. You're like, oh, okay, so these guys to watch then. And then you see them just fail over and over again, and you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Does this scene actually have good teams? Is it all random? Because that's one of the main criticisms of battle royale esports, right? Is it's all RNG, but as history shows, it's really not the case.
Well, that's what's frustrating is I think the players actually are the ones that push that narrative a lot. They're saying, "Oh, we lost because I don't, RNG." And half the time, my entire premise of mental fitness, a lot of for esports is to always try to have an internal locus of control. Right? Look at what we're doing. What can we actually control? I don't give a shit that the circle goes on the water and you hate it and all that. I don't care. Like every other team's dealing with the same stuff. The bikes that flip over and blow up. Like everybody's dealing with it. But you're really only seeing the teams that lose over and over are the ones complaining about the bikes, right? The teams that win and have a death and a bike,
exactly.
they don't, And so again, I'm so big on that internal control aspect of it, that you always can find stuff in your own game to improve, because everybody's going to deal with the bugs and the frame rates and all the other stuff. But it's just, again, for me, and here's the thing that's the most damning about it is I actually think the professional scene right now are so entitled that they're actually harming the fan base from growing even further, because people are coming up, whether it's a new team. Again, and here's the other thing. I don't know if you touched on it quite yet, or if you've been able to pick this up. A lot of these professional teams are not practicing at all, barely at all. They're playing just the scrims. They're either doing just the actual leagues they're in. They're not putting a ton of time like you think they would into the game to become the best. And so what's happening is now that's why you're seeing this World Championship. When you look at who made it to the EU closed event, no Vitality, no Liquid. There were some big hitters that didn't make it. Right?
No Rogue either.
Yep, no Rogue. And so you're looking at big teams not making it. And I'm not saying, obviously, that in an 8-game series that, oh my God, Liquid's not in the top 20. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying other teams are putting in some good work, and we can't be dismissive of them. Because I know a lot of the pros are saying random team, and they're trying to be derogatory. And you're trying to close your own environment that you're trying to grow. And I think the way to grow is to actually encourage more teams to try out. And if you're the best team, you should beat them more times than not. Don't try to artificially get them out by creating your own. Like I saw on Twitter, TSM Break had a whole thing about there should be separate qualifying parameters for professional teams versus quote unquote random teams. And I don't know what the hell that even means, or how you would ever regulate that in a fair way. But essentially was trying to say there should be two standards, one for pros and one for people up and coming. And I think that's a massive mistake for viewership and for new teams.
I mean, yeah, the thing that's funny about that is I'm kind of wondering which, bracket TSM would be in at this point, right?
Yeah, right? Oh, man. And then it's
Going back to what you said about, controlling what you do, right? That's something I always tell my teams as well, because a lot of times, I actually made a joke about this, I want to say, maybe last month or something on Twitter. There was a lot of, qualifiers and events coming up, before DreamHack qualifiers and stuff like that. So I made a tweet don't forget that if you lose the qualifiers, to congratulate winning teams on the circle luck, and if you win, make sure to defend yourself and say you got absolutely zero circle luck the entire event.
Absolutely.
Right? Because that's what everyone does. No
Yes.
one actually looks at their play objectively and says, we could have maybe done better here.
No. It'll say good game to the teams that are in their lobby and say we had some hard circle luck. That's literally the default
Every
tweet.
time.
And yeah, man, to your point, what's your take on this whole hot drop controversy where everyone's trying to, or that there's the line there, first of all, of whether someone should hot drop or not, that there's pre-designated looting areas, especially, again, in the EU. And the reason I talk about EU so much is because that's where the Knights actually play. So obviously I follow NA, but EU is kind of where I watch all the games at. So there's this whole thing about hot dropping, and then obviously in this past qualifier, TSM is essentially accusing without accusing certain teams of actually colluding together to hot drop them. What's your take?
Well, I think it's kind of a complicated issue, to be honest. So I'll just kind of give my 2 cents on it right now. It's the thing is this designated looting area sort of meta kind of developed because in a controlled environment, for example, a league with the same teams playing against each other multiple times would be a controlled environment. It's it's in every team's benefit to drop in the same location every time so that you're not running into people early game. Because if you're a top player, you're going to believe in yourself if you have equal or better circumstances to someone else, right?
Yes.
But if you're hot dropping someone, a lot of times you will have less than equal circumstances and you'll feel really bad about it when you lose that situation, right?
Yes.
Not only that, but it's just objectively more likely to win if you have 4 players up late game.
Yep.
So because of that, it makes more sense to drop separate from everyone else. So from this logic, what a lot of people think is that every team is going to want to do that. And that's really just not the case because in qualifiers, you got teams that are outside of your original controlled environment, so you don't know how much they really study the game or study other teams, right? So you don't know if they're intentionally hot dropping or if they're just going somewhere because they're not in that controlled environment to begin with, right?
Yes.
And then after that, you've got teams that are already guaranteed to not make it that can do whatever they want essentially late game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that part is what I think is probably the major issue that we should talk about, and not necessarily just hot dropping in general, because there's a lot of reasons you can hot drop someone. For example, let's say you're in second place and the only way you can win is if the first place team gets last.
Yes.
Right? It makes sense 100% of the time if there's only a prize for first or something like that to hot drop that team and make sure you get in. Same thing if you're in fourth and you need third to qualify for an event. That just makes sense, and I think that's an intrinsic part of Battle Royale that should stay. The problem is when you have teams who are colluding, as they did against TSM, I believe.
Okay.
Colluding to make sure that this random team doesn't make it because either they don't like someone on the team or they think it'd be funny, all this random stuff, right? I think that's kind of a problem
Okay.
because even PUBG Corp themselves has said that teaming in like regular games is a bannable offense, right?
Yes.
So, that's something that really needs to be cut down on. And uh, yeah, other than that, I don't really think that this like hot dropping thing is necessarily a problem. I think one of the things that's always been said about PUBG is that you need to be able to adapt better than everyone else. And if you can't adapt better than everyone else, then you're going to lose. And I don't think that this really changes too much about the situation. But that being said, it does suck a lot if you're constantly getting dropped on from like a team's point of view, right?
Right.
And you don't really know why. So it can suck a lot, and it can really bring you down a lot more than your competition if they're not getting hot dropped on. So it really sucks for the teams, but there's not really anything like within the rule set outside of colluding that would really say that it's a bad thing. Does that kind of cover everything? I
Yeah.
think it does.
Oh, I thought that was very in depth. Yes. Now, will you
Yeah.
will we like do you have an intro or anything for your podcast or like video, or do we just like roll with it? I just want to get your vibe, and then tell me any like roles, by the way, too, like no swearing or
Oh, we're already going, dude.
All right.
I just started recording since the beginning.
All right, man, perfect. Yeah, because I always try to pay respect to the host and make sure that I'm doing everything in their zone. So.
No, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I don't give a shit.
So my take on the hot shot, right, from the mental coach standpoint, is I thought when I was watching, I don't know if you followed the PGI qualifiers here for the EU scene, okay?
Of course.
So in our lobby, we had Vitality was the other big organization. Penta has been playing Unreal lately too.
Oh, I should say, I completely forgot. Congrats on getting in through the qualifiers, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they've been putting a lot of work. And again, like, my guys know the way I roll. Like, they deserve all the credit. Like, I love watching them take responsibility and try to, really empower themselves. And the way I kind of fit in is just an aid at, there's certainly things that I think we always need to work on, right? Like, I think I suffer personally from being somebody that gets clipped one tweet or 10 seconds of a podcast and they think I'm an a-hole, right? Like, because I'll say things like, yeah, our team's not complaining and look, we're winning. And people are like, oh my God, he's trash talking everybody. And so I suffer from that a lot, and I acknowledge that. Like, I'm not stupid, but behind the scenes, like, the real people know, if you spend any real time with me, like, I give credit exactly to the team for all their talent. I'm not doing anything, that is mind altering, right? Like, they have the talent. I'm doing my part. I'm playing a role. But to my original point now about the lobby we were in, there was actually going into the last game, Vitality was sitting in 5th, I believe, right on the bubble, 5th or 6th. And there were a couple teams real close to them. I actually thought to myself, well, as a viewer watching the game, and we were comfortably in 1st, like, by far. We might have even had the most points of all the EU lobbies or something. And I remember thinking, like, holy shit, we might want to hot drop Vitality. Screw it, right? Like, they're on the line of not getting in. Do I want them at the final versus a team that's unknown? And it crossed my mind.
Oh,
It
that's
crossed
a good
my
idea.
It crossed my
I never
mind.
thought about that way.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And so
that's good. Yeah.
And so, like, to your point, that's where the line gets hairy now about who to hot drop and for why and for what purpose. Because yes, if a team's in 16th and they hot drop to screw somebody, okay, we can see how that could be an ethical thing. But if you're in 1st place, does that now cross the line and become strategic? When you see a team as a threat that's been a force in the PUBG scene for forever, they're already tilted. It would be, I think, rather easy. And if we fail, it doesn't hurt us. So if we go there and they kill us, it doesn't really hurt us. I thought about it. It crossed my mind. Now, I don't know if you would actually do it or not, because honestly, the mental state right now of, and again, I don't want to get into like naming specifics and calling people out or trying to address things like that. But, like, you look at how easy it was to tilt Vitality and watch how they were unable to ultimately change their game plan to be successful in that. Maybe you did want them at the final. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a problem with all these new teams coming up. You don't know who's good or not. And I've told my team, the Knights, time and time again, you are never to use the word random team. I don't want to hear it because you don't know any of these teams coming up. They're probably putting in 3 times the work you are right now. I don't want to hear it. They're hungry. Like, you got to give respect where respect's due.
Exactly.
So I just think that right now, just as, the EC unit in general, you're exactly right about why they're rebelling over hot dropping. And I know everybody's saying it's not really the hot dropping, it's colluding. I'm telling you right now, I think they're lying. I think it has a lot to do with the actual hot dropping. They don't like it because, like you said, they're used to that meta of being in a closed, everybody's got their place. This is so comfortable for us. This is the old boys club. We don't want newcomers coming and disrupting it. It's uncomfortable. And I think that it's just one of those things that it's going to have to be addressed. And I think you are going to see a change in early game strategy. I think it's going to have to change. Like if TSM drops in a different location in game 8, they're probably going PGI. But because they go the same place every single time and are predictable, it's easy for teams to do what they did to them. Imagine if teams did collude. Again, I don't know if they did or not. Imagine, but like, let's see if this example, if they did, well, how can they collude if they don't know where you're dropping, right? So like, it's one of those things that you always have control at the end of the day. Or if you're dropping, you see them all coming, like peace out or get in a vehicle and bounce. Like we see it all the time. It's just because that it was effective and it hurt them that now there's why we're complaining about it, right? So again, just from a mental fitness standpoint, I understand why they would complain and I understand why it's unfair or they would feel at a disadvantage. But at the same time, you gotta start blaming yourself for things. It's the only way to get better.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a really good point there. As for the like ethics of hot dropping, I guess if you want to like really call it that, even though that might be like a bit heavy for this topic, obviously. In terms of like if you're in first place and you're dropping a team in fifth, that's like generally considered to be good, but like you don't want them to like qualify because it would make it harder for you later on. I think that's fine because of like the intentionality of uh playing to your competition, right? I think that there's something to be said for that. I think if you're in last place and you're just hot dropping someone because like I said, you don't like them outside of game or like you just think it'd be funny to do them specifically. I
Yeah.
think that's where I have a problem with it, you know what I mean? But if it's like literally just to in terms of competition, then I think it makes a lot of sense. And then that's why I like hot dropping in a sense, right?
Yeah, so 2 points on that. And I think,
But
again, what you said is
yeah, go ahead.
perfect. The first one is, to your point about I don't necessarily like it either when teams throw games, which gets into the whole thing about, can we create a system that somehow rewards them still for finishing in 13th versus 16th? Again, I'm not really the genius on that one, but I think if you start to encourage teams at the lower bracket, that could be a way. But regardless, if we don't like it, how are we supposed to stop it? Right? Like, that's my thing.
Right.
To the Knights, if Team 16 wants to drop you, like, they're going to drop you. You kill them or you peace out. But it's in your control. You don't have to just suffer that. That's where I'm always going to come back to, always. You will never see me blame another team for doing something that I think is either unproductive or not. But the second part, to your point about teams hot dropping, I actually think the pros would disagree with both of us. There is a very weird, it doesn't make sense to me. It goes past respect. There's almost this gamemanship that goes along the lines of, if you're trying hard or doing things that could be considered in your best interest and not the best interest of everybody, it's a problem. For instance, I'll give you an example. I know we had a qualifying tournament. I don't remember which one, but we slept in or we screwed the time up or they changed the time. We actually missed the game one of the whole qual. There was only 4 games and you had to like win the lobby or something. So like it was not good for us, the odds, right? So we slept in or missed the time. We had 1 player show up out of our 4 players. 1 player. And guess what?
Shit.
And guess what? He didn't play. He didn't even play. He backed out of the lobby and didn't play. And when we're asking him, like, what are you doing? Why would you not just get in there and snake a 7th place or something? Because everybody came on for game 2, right? But we'd game 1 obviously a 16th place or 0 points. And his response was, well, I didn't want to screw somebody else over. Like, it's not fair. I didn't know if you guys were getting up or not, and for me to be a one player, and if I snake in and take someone else's points, or if I kill somebody and they had a real shot to win, like, I don't want to do that. And I said to him, I was like, my man, but you're screwing our team. Like, I understand that you want to be respectful and that there's a certain level of not doing things unethical or selfish, but dude, I don't, like, forget the other teams. Are you kidding? Like, we need to place. Like, you play for this team. You're being paid to play. And so, like, that was like a perfect example of like a real eye-opening experience for me. And I'm like, holy cow, all these players sort of feel the same way about each other. And even, to be quite honest with you, even a couple of tweets I had yesterday, just kind of coming out complaining, I was told internally, even by some of our dudes, that, hey, don't do that. You're ruffling feathers and we like everybody. And I'm like, well, I can't control how everybody reacts, and neither can you. If you get first place and they get mad, what does it have to do with us? Or if I say something like, hey, I think we're playing very well because we're not complaining. right? If I say that we're playing well, we're not complaining, is there a correlation? I can't help it if someone gets mad, but the fact that everybody else, but the players right now care about how everybody reacts, I think it's a problem. I question that. I don't think. I think it's a non-productive behavior.
No, that's strange too because I mean I'm all for honorable play, right? But that kind of goes past honor and into
It
like
does.
I don't know, insanity almost, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a competition. A competition's a competition. You're trying to win.
You would think. I have.
Yeah,
I'm starting
I
to
don't
get.
know.
I'm almost starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I mean, at some point to this, I had a conversation with my employee. I said, "Hey, doesn't this look like the old boys club where they just don't want anybody new coming in, and as long as somebody wins from their friend group or that's a current professional team, that at the end of the day they'll be all right with it. But if some random team comes up through the ranks and plays very well and wins, and now it's a threat to them because think about it. Obviously, if they can keep the same 15 to 20 teams that are the top and are constantly rotating through different LAN events and earning the money, it's a lot easier to win money and to make a living versus if there's 60 teams that can come in at any point in time. So it almost feels weirdly like that, where they're being very protective of each other because they know that if an outside threat rises up, if a new team comes in, works hard, and plays very well, it means less money for each of them. So it's almost that is kind of the vibe that I get, which again is a mistake. It's a terrible mindset, absolutely abysmal for everything, for the entire esports community, for the PUBG community, for fans, and even for the organizations, both the ones that are upcoming and the ones that are here. It's just not a healthy mentality.
You know, this actually reminded me. I wrote an article that was kind of about this a while back. I'll link it to you right now.
Okay, perfect.
So this is like from March 8th. So this is a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
So I
Look
don't
at the
know
headline
if you
even.
were around at this point, but basically this article happened because a team in Europe, Zoktin Nam, they were pretty high ranked in the APL at this time.
Yep.
This is for qualifiers for is it PGL? I think it's the qualifiers for PGL. And it was on Miramar. And obviously at this time, Miramar was a lot less defined than Erangel was in terms of drop locations and where everyone drops and stuff like that, right? So Zoktin Nam, I believe, had a really poor first few games and were pretty much unable to make it out. And their drop location was, I forget exactly why, it was like either taken or it just had worked out really terribly for them in the past few games, right? So they're like, let's just change it up. And they ended up going to Chumacera, which ended up being the same place that Team Liquid had been going to. Now, what actually happened, if you look at the VODs, I believe Zoktin Nam actually had gotten to Chumacera first, technically, in this game. But what happened is that Team Liquid took to Twitter, and a lot of Discord messages were exchanged internally.
Yeah.
A few Team Liquid members were like going in on Zoktin Nam all the time on like, they're like chasing us, shooting us down. They don't really care. They're just trying to sabotage us, et cetera, et cetera. And so I got in touch with one of the Zoktin Nam guys, and I'm like, do you want to tell your side of the story? Because like no one really tweeted anything. So he like came on and he told me everything, and I wrote this whole article about it, right? But this
Yeah.
kind of goes back to the like thing we're talking about of like it's not necessarily hot dropping that's the problem. It's like colluding or like doing it intentionally, right? So they're just going somewhere to try to get a better result. They didn't realize that all of this drama with Team Liquid would happen.
Oh my
Because
god.
how could you?
It's well, like almost to my point, right? It almost actually feels like you could take the collusion thing in a very weird scenario, right? And then again, this is very extreme, and I'm just kind of asking a question because I think if you connect some dots, it's almost like it creates good conversation. You could almost start to begin arguing. It's very early, but again, that maybe some of these professional teams are almost pseudo colluding to keep their own selves kind of like at the top of the ladder by trying to discourage any sort of strategy changes that would affect their ability to be effective. And we see it again. And again, outside the TSM situation, that I have no idea. If you look at both teams that are accused, they both deny it pretty emphatically as well. But TSM would be a fan favorite. It would be a team that is a very large organization, would be part of probably the boys club. And you get two random teams, by all means and measures, considered from, at least from my perspective, from what the professionals think about them. Like, I can see why people would gang up and say, what the hell, this is stupid, no one should hot drop. And right? So it's so fascinating. Even just your headline here of Zoktin Nam, because you're right, they were a very high-performing team when I first came on the scene and started playing, and I haven't seen I haven't seen a lot from them. And I wonder kind of what this did to them from a mental fitness standpoint in terms of affecting the way that they actually play their game. And
Well, so this event actually affected them in a couple ways. So first of all, they actually did break another rule in this event by having someone else play on one of their players' accounts because two of their guys were unable to play.
Gotcha.
So one of them just played on one of their accounts, and then that guy ended up getting a ban.
Okay.
But what's really funny is that there's a post that GLL made, an official post from the GLL league, and to their credit, they did rescind this eventually once it was brought to their attention how ridiculous this was. But they said so I'll just read the whole thing. During the PGL qualifiers, there was also a situation regarding the squad playing for Zoti Nam that showed unsportsmanlike behavior. During one of the matches they played, they had one person sharing his PUBG account to let another play in his place. Blah blah blah. And then it says in their final game of the match, they decided to follow Team Liquid and try to destroy their chances of advancing. Zoti Nam didn't have any chance of advancing before the final game and decided to act unsportsmanlike and destroy for another team. I'm gonna give them a pass because they're EU, EU English. But we have decided to ban Zoti Nam for 6 months and a 1-year ban on the player Broder. So they banned the entire team for 6 months as well as a 1-year ban on the player that had his account shared with someone else. And the way it's worded is it sounds like that they're banning them not only for the account sharing, but also for sabotaging Team Liquid. Yikes. Which is why this whole situation is so ridiculous, right? Because like, who in their right mind would ban someone for that?
Well, dude, that's what I'm saying. Like and again, I was told that some of my tweets have made the rounds on Discords for the other EU teams, and the way it was communicated to me is that this might be held against our team, the Knights. And I said, for what? I mean, for God's sake. So essentially you're having almost a handful of teams or a handful of managers or whatever the hell it is that are almost trying to assert authority over the entire landscape and create like pseudo rules, right? Like, these are the rules we behave by. It kind of reminds you of a country club, right? Like, and there's certain rules we do, and if you step outside and if you smack talk to, like, if you try to say people are complaining or call other people and you're not being nice, then we're going to take it out on you. And so I think part of the whole thing is some of my players are concerned of the image that I'm portraying as somehow it would affect the entire organization. And again, from where I'm coming from, boys, I understand. I would never do something that's going to disrupt what we're doing. But you got to understand this. Like, I'm very careful about my words. I'm in business. I own I own right now 3 businesses. So I understand public image, and I understand I put a lot of time and thought into my posts, and I always try to bring value at the end of the day. And so there's 2 ways for me to bring value, right? Producing good and actually giving strategy or giving tips, and then also removing what I'm calling quote unquote evil or removing bad, which is getting back poor things out of your play. Both things are a net positive. And so I'm always focused on that. And so just because somebody else, and apparently everybody, reacted poorly to what I said, I can't control that. What's the other option? I'm supposed to muzzle myself about basic human principles that complaining is bad. I said, you don't understand. If they're offended by a tweet saying complaining is bad and could potentially be a reason why they're losing because it affects your mindset, if anybody's offended, that means they're admitting they're doing it. So to me, it's just an odd scenario that we find ourselves in. But again, speaking specifically about the EU, right now the landscape and the way the community is, it's certainly something that's going to, I believe, has got to change if these teams are going to be here in 6 to 18 months. Otherwise, I think teams with better mindsets and more healthy characteristics will come up and replace them.
I mean, in TSM's defense, right, on the TSM subreddit, Smack actually did posted that he said better performances in earlier rounds on our part could have helped to avoid the situation.
Perfect.
We're always learning, and obviously no exception. We have work ahead to improve and rise to our full potential, blah, blah, blah. So he's really positive about it. He's not like dwelling on it, And
that's
he's
exactly right, man.
Not to dwell on it either. And that's perfect, right? That's the best response possible.
The best response. And again, any team that's, in these qualifiers that everybody is saying, oh, these are random teams, the seeding system sucks, da-da-da-da-da. If you're sitting as a top organization and you're in 5th place or 6th place heading into Game 8, I agree with Smack completely and give him props because that's fantastic, because he's right. They should never let it got to Game 8. You should have dominated your lobby. I mean, to be quite honest with you.
No, that's right. And I mean, you can look at FaZe too, right? They had a whole game that was not even counted because of PGI rules not allowing them to play with 3, and they still finished 700 points above everyone else in their lobby.
Yeah.
When FaZe does that, it's hard to listen to any other one complain for real,
Well, that's the point, right? If some other team overcame more obstacles than you did, you do not deserve the right to complain. All right, you just don't deserve it. There's somebody else then that reserves that right if they choose to. And obviously, I agree with you that a bad rule or what have you, FaZe certainly overcame the hell out of that, and started day 2 in 5th and rose all the way up their boards. And again, to compliment FaZe, they're an organization that I don't see too much complaining on Twitter. If anything, I actually get that they make me laugh, because Fuzzface specifically always says, like, I just come on here to read other comments. I don't say anything. I just read everybody's stuff. Yeah. And it's really funny. I agree with him. I think there's some good banter that goes on, whether it's the casters that get involved, and there's just so many opinions right now. And again, the biggest theme, if you're out there right now, if you're a PUBG team, if you're on the professional scene, you got to quit caring so much about other people's opinions. We'll focus inward. Get your teammates, get your team in a position that, it doesn't even matter what people say. Like, that's the win. That's the mental fitness win.
Yeah, for sure. I think the one comment that bothered me, that's I forget who it was. Maybe it wasn't even this verbatim, but there was kind of like an overall sentiment going on from some people where they were making some tweets that made it sound like, if you didn't place well or you didn't qualify in PGI, then like you were just worse than all these other teams. And I'm like, yeah, because an 8-game series of a 20-team lobby is like exactly what, proves that you're better than everyone else, not the months and months of competition beforehand on the normal rule sets, right?
Right. Oh, it's like traditional sports. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
What? Traditional sports?
No, I was gonna.
What's that?
So look, man, I have a very bad habit of cutting people off. Continue with your point, because I think
No, I was done. Yeah, go
all
ahead,
right.
please.
So when you look at like a traditional sport like the NFL, the NHL, MLB, right? The playoff systems, it's the best teams don't always get to the playoffs. Like, there's definitely talented and stacked teams in the regular season that, for a variety of factors, don't make it into the postseason. And likewise, the Super Bowl every year is not the best 2 teams every single year. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And so, yeah, right. Anybody that's going to claim that a best of 8 series is the absolute determinant of the 20 best teams, I would say that is certainly a mistaken opinion. Now, the flip side of it, though, is that we can somehow... I saw this opinion out there. I forget who it was by. I think it was just like a cat. No, it was somebody that worked at an organization that like runs tournaments, I'm pretty sure. And he says, we should have the 20 best teams at the PGI to represent... at the EU LAN for the PGI World Championships, we should have the 20 best teams on the stage. We should have them. This is a bad system because we're not getting the 20 best teams. And so again, with that system, the opinion that is trying to articulate to me is, well, how the hell do you determine the best 20 teams? I don't even think if you made it a season, right? If you played 30 matches, you still aren't guaranteed to get the best team. So it's just a weird conversation. To me, again, from my standpoint as mental fitness, it does me no good to sit there and try to ponder, well, what teams are in, the best or the worst. For me, the Knights are in, the other 19 teams have been defined, and we need to go to work. That's, at the end of the day, what most teams should do is turn the page. And, all the other stuff's kind of like what I would term mental masturbation, right? Trying to figure out the best system, the perfect this. It's just never probably going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the thing about like saying, we need the best 20 EU teams or whatever, it's like, in theory, I agree, right?
Yeah.
But like, the best 20 EU teams, I don't even know if there's like a best 20 EU teams, right?
I agree.
I make a power ranking every so often. I'm probably going to do it like, every 1/3 of the year or so. And the last one I did just came out at the beginning of this month, since it was January through April. And like, I made it a global power ranking, and there were 10 teams in there, right? And it's like, I feel like it's really hard to, once you get after 10 teams, and especially after 15 teams, making a power ranking gets really hard.
Yes, it does.
Because a lot of results start looking really similar, and no one's really, any meaningful amount on top of the other, right? So when you say we need the best 20 EU teams, I'm thinking, okay, so I can probably give you a good top 10 EU teams. After that, I have no idea who you would even say.
I actually think there's an opportunity for you to provide more value even to your audience right now by creating a separate list, maybe of like the hottest teams, and just do 3 or something, like 3 to 4 teams that are like super hot right now. PUBG to me seems very cyclical. It seems like teams go through spurts of unbelievable placings and unbelievable, placements and finishings and tournaments and stuff, and then there's periods of just absolute terror, and people are in the bottom half of lobbies all the time. And so actually almost, again, it's like you said, it's really tough to create a list of consistency. Now we're trying to do it internally. I'm trying, we have a whole system on the back end for the Knights with Google Drive, and we're trying to capture things that matter. And it's an ongoing conversation, because it's almost like, on one end, it's frustrating for me because we are constantly almost like moving the needle as to what our goals are, right? It's almost like at first it was get to a LAN event, then we go there, play with 3 players, and then it's like, okay, well, what's next? Like, what's the next move? Oh, get to more LANs, get to more, win cash earnings. For me, we haven't done well enough earning cash at events and getting to LANs, and for being around as long as we have, and I always want to do better. Now that's probably me being harsh. I don't think anybody would say the Knights are a bottom 30 team or something like outside the top 30. But for me, I don't.
No, not at all.
But I don't want to be coaching the 11th best team or the 17th. I want number one. I want to help them get there. And so we're trying to find ways to capture metrics that could help us guide to determine how well we're doing against the rest of the scene. So we're probably going to start looking at really hardcore tracking placements in every time we play in an actual professional game, league, scrim, or not scrim per se, but like the actual leagues that we're in, which are like a bazillion. At least that's what it feels like, trying to keep up with it all. But actually keep tracking all the placements and trying to track like average placement or average points and all that stuff, and just try to really give us a scope of how we're actually performing. But it's been very tough. So I empathize with your quest to get the top 20 teams, because you're right, outside the top 10, you're going to probably have a constant flux of teams from 10 to 20.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, on my last list, I think I had like Knights and like I think eighth. Yeah, I had him in eighth in the world. And then, I mean, it's like when you look at, I did like a ranking based off of, what would you say, like the 4 lands, and then the GLL series, PUBG series, the Curse Trials events, and then like the APL series, right? And that's pretty much everything that happened in the first third of the year. And then I just took all
Yep.
those scores, and then I weighted them based off of, first, second, third, fourth, etc. Obviously, the top ones are weighted more, and then I
Yep.
just ran it through, made EU teams get a little bit, higher placements because EU is generally a stronger region than NA, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera, and then came out with a list that looked pretty good. But like the thing is when I was looking at this data, it's like there's so many different ways that you can actually like utilize the data to get different results. Like for example, if you over prioritize online events or offline events over the other one, right? You start getting really weird results in terms
Yes.
of who's on top of the other. So trying to come up with like a objective ranking for teams is really complicated, and it seems
Oh,
like it's really opinion based.
it is. I mean,
So
I think it's very subjective, and that's what the problem. And again, I'm pretty sure I posed the question to that poster on Twitter. I said, okay, what system would you? How would you systematically find the top 20 best teams that should go to LAN event, right?
right,
And like that question, if somebody can answer it, great. I'd be open to hearing it. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be impossible. You're not going to be able to do it objectively. You're going to be very subjective. You're going to make your opinions known. And I pretty much told the guy, I was like, if that's what you truly feel, or even to TSM Break's point of view about how professionals should be on a different level of qualifying, well, then there should be an organization. If there's enough momentum for that, then some organization might come along and do invite only stuff. Great, there you go. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to deal with random teams. I just don't think that's going to be productive. I don't think that's a net win for everybody. But go to town, right? And so like that's the tough part,
yeah,
man. So I do not envy you, in your task to continue to try to produce the best rankings for teams. It's a very complex issue.
yeah. Well, who knows how much longer I'll be doing it, really, because you know, I might end up. What I thought sounds like a good idea is I don't know if you know anything about the Smash Bros. Melee community at all, but what they do is they do a community power ranking. So they get like a panel of, I want to say, how many people? Is it like 20 to 100 people? It's probably somewhere in that range. And then they just have them like rank everyone that they want on like a 1 to 100 scale,
Yeah.
and then that's how they do their rankings. And that seems like a way that could probably you know
Now,
get a little bit
is
more
the
of a spread out
yeah
analysis, right?
is the community of Smash Brothers? Again, I know we have a player in the Knights. I haven't had a chance to really interact with him, but I know I think he's in the top 50 in the world right now or something. But is that community different from PUBG? Would you say in terms of behavior from how they each view each other, or would you say similar?
That's hard for me to tell. In Melee, I was more involved in my local scene
Gotcha.
than like in the global scene, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard for me to tell because in Melee, I wasn't like a top player or a top community figure either.
Yeah.
Whereas in PUBG, I'm like decently behind the scenes and I talk to most pros and stuff like that, right? So
Right.
it's hard for me to tell the difference. I think the Melee scene is much more, what would you say? I'd say they're pretty tight knit, you know? if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Everyone
mean,
kind of is like friends with each other.
yeah, because I was trying to figure
So
out.
maybe in that way it's kind of similar.
So in that ranking system, who would be the ones to actually vote on the rankings? From the you said I think to the top of like 20 or 100 teams or something. Like who would be the ones that vote and rank?
As far as I know, it's people like commentators
Oh, okay.
and like community figures and other ways. So like people, that's a good question. I haven't like followed the melee scene in like a couple years.
Gotcha. Okay, because the reason is if it's um, because if it's done improperly or just not accounted for. See, at first when you first said it, I thought you meant each organization would rank other organizations, and then
Oh no,
all
no,
right, because
not at
obviously
all, yeah.
that could be boys club all over, right? Where the team's just even like a team like
Yeah, of
it's
course,
completely
yeah.
failing. Everybody likes NIP. Guess what? NIP, we're gonna vote for you at like 28th when you should be 53.
Right, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, yeah, that's certainly interesting. I mean, again, right now, I'm pretty much all like I'm in favor of all the above right now until something kind of solidifies itself. In terms of ranking, but again, at the end of the day, too, like for me, obviously being biased towards the Knights and trying to like really focus on them and trying to get them the best, like the rankings, we probably like for me, it'll be an entertainment thing. Like I'll consume it, but I will not have our players like get really romantically involved with it and hope they like rise up the ranks because then obviously if you go down the ranks, it affects your gameplay. So, but certainly for the fan base,
No,
fan base, like to your point, so that like the things you talked about on episode 1, so that does not occur. I think it could be a valuable system for the fan base.
And the thing is, it's like whenever I make something like a power ranking or most of my articles, right, I'm not making it for like, Team Liquid players. I'm not making it for, Pittsburgh Knights players, right? I'm making it for people that,
Yes.
watch the events and want like content, right? Because I'm not even a content creator primarily. It's not really what I want to do. I'm a coach and analyst, and that's what I like doing, first of all. I just do content on the side because I also enjoy it, and there's not a whole lot of content out there right now, right?
Right.
So I think, like, because I get a decent amount of criticism for some of my opinions. Like, for example, in my first power ranking for all of 2017, I listed TSM as a top 3 team. And I still think that they were a top 3 team at the time. A lot of pros disagree with me, not that they ever have any evidence to say why they disagree with me, they just do. But, like, I don't think they understand that it's not for them, It's just for whoever
I
that's not a
that's
pro player,
my
essentially.
man. You are hitting you're hitting a nail that I believe most players are completely oblivious to, and it goes larger than just the ranking scale. They don't understand that them playing in these events and the way that they behave on Twitter is actually affecting the fans that you're the same fans that your power rankings are trying to help. Their behavior is discouraging people. I'm telling you right now, nobody likes to watch people complain. Whether that's LeBron James complaining, he flops on the ground, soccer players that flop if you like sneeze in their direction. Like nobody likes to see people complain or pout or whine. And I really don't think the players understand that in order for this to grow, it's the fans need to like pay attention. You need to get your viewership up. Someone told me like viewership of PUBG compared to like what people watch on Twitch for like League of Legends isn't even close. Not even in the ballpark of the amount of popularity of a different game. And so for me,
Yeah,
it's
probably
like
about like 1/10 in terms of events, I think,
yes.
from like memory, but
Yep. So like in order to get to where you or want to go to, you're going to have to display professionalism so people like to follow you. Because if all the teams complain and crush PUBG developers every second and say the game sucks, why would a fan ever watch the game? Like just answer that question, right? Like what are you giving fans to watch for? Like what are they going to watch?
yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think at the same time, professionals do need to have a certain level of criticism towards the game because, as we all know, the game is far from perfect, right? But there is, I'd say, kind of a barrage of negativity that does come from professional Twitter. You rarely see very much positivity in PUBG Pro Twitter
Yeah. Well, they often
sphere.
say if any of you out there in the audience have a girlfriend, you understand the next statement I'm about to make. It ain't what you said, it's how you said it, right? I get told tone of voice all the damn time with my girlfriend. Like I say something and she's like, well, the way you said it. I said, well, God damn it, like take my word. It's the most frustrating thing on human earth for men. But it's the same thing for the players. Like I can acknowledge that you don't think the game's perfect, but instead of you saying, "Oh my God, FPS 40, it's so unplayable right now. This is bullshit. We're quitting. We're never playing." Like if you looked at No Loot Gaming, they just up and quit. Like they just quit as a team because they were frustrated
Yeah.
with the performance of the game. Meanwhile, there's teams that are still winning those lobbies. So everybody's dealing with it. It's just how they're dealing with it. And then that's my problem is when they go to give the feedback, it's done in a way that's not going to be beneficial, man. I mean, not at all. Like if PUBG Corp's serious and they want to create almost like a special Discord for players to give specific feedback or create a different avenue for that to happen, or like a conference every once in a while to bring some of the best minds there to talk about it, that's game. I'm loving that. But like, there's a big difference between you complaining on Twitter and then you saying something like "good games today." You know, even though despite our bike crashing through the wall, through the ground and going into the ocean again, we were very happy with how we handled that adversity and came back and played well. Like, there you can say shit different ways, and just no one's doing it. You're right, nobody, and it's frustrating. So again, I'm very happy you brought up the example of Smack and how he is addressing this on I believe you said Reddit, and I want to encourage that. So I'm going to give him props, man. That's good shit. That's what most people should be doing, and in fact, that's all you should be doing. I would never go negative again. Go all in on positive.
Yep. I think some of the Team Liquid guys are being somewhat like that on Twitter too, being more positive than some of the other guys. I think I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I read too many tweets.
I know it goes on, man, and I'm sure there are, right, and I'm sure everybody has their times of being positive and times of being negative, but certainly people are going to remember you for what you're more consistent at, and I can't actually, I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm going to be completely honest with you because that's what I do best. I just try to give value, and my big thing is the truth is always like the truth. It's the 100. It's undefeated. It won't be, you can't hide stuff anymore. And so I'll be honest with you, I'm very much looking forward to listening to your entire video with Liquid Scoom, because he's somebody actually that I've used as an example of what I don't want our team to be in certain instances, which is as an in-game leader complaining about anything under the sun. And the reason is, okay, you have to understand from my perspective, it's very important. If an in-game leader is complaining about water circles, okay, which it happens from time to time, water circles, and saying, oh my God, these water circles need to come out of the game. What do you think happens in game one of a very intense qualifier or a league game? Game one, you get a water circle. How do you feel like your team's going to feel if they just watched you go off on Twitter about water circles? Are they going to be ultimately confident like they should be? Or are they going to feel in the back of their mind like, oh, goddamn, this is going to be a challenge because we hate these things? Like, for me, I'm trying to remove all outside forces for players in game to be the best they can be. And so even when I play PUBG Mobile, again, I'm no pro, but like if I get a really hard shift circle, I acknowledge it in about 3.1 seconds, and then I make a call and move. And I'm not saying that's not what the pros do, but that's what they should focus on only. It doesn't do me any good if in game I'm like, yo, what the hell, a water circle? Like, or even afterwards, like to come on and say, well, we would have won if it wasn't a water. Like, for me, we've definitely used Scoom because he's a very vocal and respected person in the community. I've used him as an example of like his bad side. I've showed him, and he's very, I listened to the first 10 minutes of the interview with him, and he admits it very openly in the beginning. He's like, I complain all the time. I should complain more. Da, 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 da. Like, so it's not something that I'm like fabricating. Like it's very open about it. I think it's fascinating because he isn't such a power to wield over like PUBG Corp to help them and other players and fans. And I just wish, and again, this is my thing, I'm always trying to give value. I would encourage him to do more of the positive stuff. He can give feedback in a way that's going to be constructive. I just, from my professional opinion, a lot of the times it's not done that way. But I love the guy, his passion for the game. I love how he's out there, and he's very vocal, and he's vocal often. And again, I'm just trying to get everybody moving the goalposts to the final goal, which is to grow the game. And you've got to view it that way. You can't have people saying the game sucks, it ain't going to be an esport, or it's unplayable. You just can't say that.
Yeah, I mean, of people in the community that I respect, Scoom is like way up at the top, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he is for most people.
All the teams that I've probably criticized Team Liquid more than just about any other team, and I've also probably praised them more than just about any other team.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he takes both of them in stride as my opinion, and like that's that, right? He takes everyone's opinion. He's mature about everyone's opinion. He doesn't flame them back or something like that. He just works hard at his craft, and he wants the game to be as good as it can be, right? I think those are pretty much the only two things he cares about. And I think while he can be sometimes maybe a bit too complainy or negative on Twitter, I think he probably has in the recent times recognized that maybe he was a bit too complaining on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's just me guessing.
Well, you're right. Because, and he actually had go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in the video later on in the video, he actually spent a decent amount of time defending PUBG Corp's decision to do 20 teams in TPP at PGI. which
Perfect.
I did not expect, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
he had one of the best tweets ever a couple of days ago. And again, I do follow a lot of these guys for perspective, right? Because part of my job is to get our team in a position to win. And so part of that is absolutely understanding their entire mindset, which is definitely can be also learned from other players as well, right? So here he is. This is actually a fantastic tweet. And if he ever hears this podcast or the video, more of this, and I will be your biggest fan. I promise you I will. He says...
Shoutouts to you if you're watching, Scoop.
Yep. He says, May 27th on Twitter, we came 6th and didn't qualify by 90 points. And this is for the big global championship. Very emotional. I'm sure it's very devastating to come in 6th when top 5 got in. Okay? We came 6th and didn't qualify by 90 points, which was something like 6 kills. A very small amount of points. Super, super sad. After having such good weeks of consistency, we failed to perform this weekend. Mainly my fault too. I hugely underperformed. Sorry to team and fans. Good games to all that qualified. Good luck and have fun at Haymarket. Now, that is one of the best tweets I have read in the entire community. Right?
Oh, 100%.
And if that's all that ever happened from him again, tweets like that, or saying things like, hey, we did well, we got 3rd, we were very consistent, good games, everybody. Like, I'm great with that. And actually, I don't want people to get it twisted and be like, well, Fran, then how come you're allowed to criticize? No. I'm not saying you can't criticize. I don't want blaming. Because just as I read that tweet, there's plenty of tweets where it's, oh, we didn't qualify because the bike glitched out of the map and the frame rates are so bad and other teams hot dropped us. Like, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying you can't criticize. I'm saying is I don't want you to make excuses for when you fail and try to blame other things. It doesn't look good. And I want, again, Scoom and everybody else and their mother that plays this game, if we get more of this brings the community closer together. And so even though I'm probably the most hated, well, I don't want to be egotistical. Even though some of my stuff may be taken out of context if it's ever seen, I assure people I want nothing but the best for everybody. I am not, what I say hurts because it's the truth, and it's very hard to face that at times, but I promise you I am not rooting against anybody. That's not in my bones, man. It's not on my moral compass.
No, and I mean, I'm very much the same way. Like, I'm having you here, right?
Yep.
I think if I wasn't, then I probably would just say, nah, you can go find someone else.
Yep. I feel you, man. I feel you.
Yeah. And, I think, just to counter your point a little bit, just play devil's advocate a little bit, I do think that people that complain on Twitter as pros in the past have been, if nothing else, very useful, because there have been some changes that eventually went through that really needed to be complained about, right? And it's hard for me to... Because you're right about the way the community interacts with each other and that we need more general positivity and not as much blaming the game and all that stuff, because you can see this mentality bleeding over into the fans of the game very readily on Twitch chat, on Twitter, all that stuff, right? Like, it's apparent. It's not like it's a secret that this mentality from the pros is bleeding over to the fan base.
Yes.
But at the same time, I have to wonder if no one ever complained about the way that water worked, or if no one ever complained about oh god, what's another big one? I know there's plenty. If no one ever complained about
Miramar, the entire map.
Stuff,
That's
right.
what the
Or
about.
How about the biggest one? If no one ever complained about circles and the way that circle settings worked, Scoom and Minimint and Yannick and all those other guys would have never come together and tried to really work on it to make a good competitive system for PUBG, and we might not even be here right now, right? So
well, I appreciate your point.
That's why it's
because from
you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I'm not a professional, right? So like although I've learned a ton following the Knights and playing the game itself on mobile and understanding and watching it. Folks, I watch every game of the Knights. Everyone, I watch them. And it's for me to become the best professional that I am to do my job. And so I'm always trying to understand. There's going to be things, though, that I'm not going to be able to fully comprehend about the actual in-game minute details that make the game good versus average. And, and certainly something like a circle settings, the reason why I will never talk about it and why I won't complain about it is because I don't think I have the right to, because I don't for me, it doesn't matter if the circle hard shifts or it goes more center. To me, the game's the game, and that's my job. Like, my job is not to make the perfect game for playable, because I don't play it either, right? So I don't get it from either perspective. I don't play the game, so I can't give ways that make it the most playable game. But from a mental fitness coach standpoint, I don't give a shit if the circle goes on the water or if it hard shifts. We got to deal with that obstacle when that comes up. So that's why I'm so brutal the other way, just because of my own point of view, I have to be. Imagine if I, as the mental fitness coach, were complaining about, oh my God, this circle can't be hard shifting. So again, to your point, like if there's optimal ways to improve the game, I'm all for it. I want the game to be better, and every game should get better. The first time it comes out, it's not going to be the best version of the game. I want to see maybe a more productive way. And so if some of these big guys, Yannick from Rogue, even if the FaZe guys get involved as a top performing team, you take, like you said, the top teams and the most vocal guys, almost create a conference or create some form of group where they're able to actually create a PowerPoint or create like a list of things, very succinct, 1 through 5, and send that to PUBG and say, here's a statement from the players, almost like in the NFL, how you have a players organization, right?
So I'm actually going to cut you off right there
good.
real quick. So if you want to know the really funny thing, and I think this is actually the root of why so many pros are complaining on Twitter in this way that we're kind of disagreeing with.
Yeah.
So the thing is that I mentioned that, Scoom, Yannick, and Miniman, a bunch of guys created those circle settings, right?
Yep.
So they sent that to PUBG Corp, and there has been people that have compiled, like you said, list 1 through 5, etc., of points, and sent it to PUBG Corp, and they pretty much wiped their asses with it.
Yeah.
So that's why people are really upset, right?
And like then the next question is, I understand why obviously you'd be upset because that's obviously brutal. But then it's like, well, what's next, right? Like you have to have the conversation at a certain point that if you have to understand the other side. If they're not willing to listen, then they're not willing to listen, and then it becomes a real conversation. And again, it's never really even the points that we're discussing, right? And I don't even think we're disagreeing. I think we're agreeing more than disagreeing. It's more so just the process of it, right? Like if we can actually rise above all that and just understand, okay, they don't want our shit. Well, then we'll see if they continue to improve it or not. And if they don't improve it, their own game's going to be out, right? Like that, ultimately, it's the worst thing of human life. I just had a very intense, emotional conversation with a really good friend of mine. He came to me about his father. His father is abusing pain medications and alcohol to deal with back pain. Okay? And he says, I'm devastated. This is like my best friend, and it feels like he's actually dead, but he's still alive, right? It's just like a weird dynamic, and he's yelling at me. It's so confusing. And I said to him, man, it is the worst thing of human life to realize that you're trying to improve something, and at the end of the day, if the other side doesn't want it or doesn't listen to it, you can't do anything. You can't do it. You can't force it.
Yeah. And
so for me, again, we take that principle, obviously in a less emotional aspect of it, but essentially do the same thing, where I gave him the same advice. I said, okay, if they're going to wipe their, again, and I'm trying to like take that example and turn it into the one that you just said about the PUBG settings. Okay, if they're going to wipe their ass with my recommendations or our collective recommendations as a player, we have two options. Option one is we continue to move past and continue to still do it. We'll still submit things on a regular basis, while we fully acknowledge that they may not be interested in listening. But we're going to acknowledge that. We're not going to complain anymore and demand that they listen. Because obviously, if you go down that path, that's a slippery slope then where the players dictate everything. So to a certain extent, you have to understand that you might not get everything that you want. So, but you continue to do it and understand that they might not like it. Option two, you stop submitting it. Like, that's really it. As black and white as it can be, that's my thing. I want to push us towards, if we're going to submit things, if we want to have change, let's just do it in a way that we look like the bigger people, because I consider myself obviously more in the players branch of the business than the developers. But at the same time, if they're the ones that have to pull the trigger on different settings and stuff, like if they're the ones ultimately doing it, there's always so much we can do. And I just want to make sure we're doing everything in our power so that we get, like, no one can come back on us and say, well, the players are behaving like assholes or they're behaving immaturely. I don't want to go there. And I'm just, again, my thing, I'm always trying to produce value for this community. I want us to be in the right frame of mind. But that's my thing, right? Mental fit would make sense.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think that you're hitting on a really important point, right? In that, just I think to summarize kind of like this whole topic, right? It's just like people on Twitter or etc. at the top level just need to be more mature in general, and then like stop trashing the game. Basically.
Well, they're young too. I keep forgetting that. Like, I'm 27. I'm an old soul for being 27 even. Like, I've been told I act like I'm 50, right? Like, I'm trying to run different businesses at my age, doing the things financially that I'm doing, which is like getting every penny that I make and put it into my business. Like, dude, I don't know if I've even bought a pair of underwear in 7 months because I'm putting every penny I have into my business to keep growing, right? But that's a very mature decision. Yeah. Most people my age are trying to become Instagram stars and buying fancy cars and watches and stupid stuff. So I understand, but then I start thinking, like, wait a minute, our in-game leader, Voxic, for the Knights, he's 17. Holy hell. Right. When I was 17, I was in a different atmosphere than he is. He's even better than I was at 17 in terms of maturity. But they're still 17, and they're still learning. And the game having to say that you're a professional video game player at 17. My concern is that it would work against your ego, right? It'll give you this sense of authority that you're like a pseudo celebrity or like a small time person. And trust me, technology is getting more popular. Like the high school football quarterback is now, I believe, equivalent to a high school player that's a professional video game player, because they're not very often. And again, I want to make people the best human beings possible, and I want to try to counterbalance that. So you're exactly right, man. Maturity is going to be a thing. And a lot of these players are, under 25 years old, I think. At least that's my perspective of it. So you're right, though. It's just something to work in progress.
19, right?
Yeah.
I'm 19, so everyone in this community is young.
And I don't want people to get confused either. Don't get me twisted. Don't take me out of context. I'm not saying everybody should just agree with Fran. Fran's right. Praise Fran. I'm just trying to start conversations and discussions. And to be honest with you, to this point, the community, pro players, pro coaches, pro organizations, the developers, nobody seems to be willing to have an honest conversation and be mature about it. It's just been a very brutal process to this point, and I'm just trying to get a conversation going about if people think it would be better served if we change our attitudes. And that's it. And if people can agree or disagree with me all day long, I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of disagreeing with somebody. Like, to your point, there's been a couple of things that we've probably slightly disagreed on, but we're having a mature conversation. You don't see us yelling or complaining or like retweeting things and trying to go back in history and play gotcha. We're just trying to do things to move everything forward, man.
Because the thing is like both of our viewpoints, not just each other, right? But our viewpoints aren't really on opposite ends of each other. They don't have like opposite goals, right? Our goal is the same. We just want the game to be better, and we want the community to be better. That's it. And
that's what's frustrating is I believe, and the reason I'm so opinionated is I believe I know how to get there, right? If I didn't, I wouldn't be out there chirping at all. Like I wouldn't be in a position. I wouldn't be coaching a team if I didn't feel like I could help mental fitness wise. Like if I didn't feel like I could produce results, I wouldn't be doing it. That's the way my business acumen is. So again, you're exactly right. Like everybody's going to have different perspective. I've obviously never played the game, so you will never catch me tactically criticizing somebody. Trust me, I'm staying in my lane. But at the same point, attitudes, that's in my wheelhouse, baby. And I just think that we're not displaying the correct ones right now. And again, we'll see if things change. My hypothesis, here's my big hypothesis for you. If attitudes don't change, and if we don't look at the competitive scene as what it is, which should be inviting to everybody, and actually look at the qualifying with some respect to some of these teams that go through brutal 5, 6, 7 rounds of qualifiers to get to where like a lot of teams get invited to or what have you. Like it's brutal if you're not on an org and an unknown. It's brutal to make your way through hundreds of teams. If we don't start displaying respect and start understanding that we need to control our own game, and we better not be blaming new teams for dropping us, or we don't like their strategy, or why would they not do this? If we don't look at things critically and try to understand that the game's going to develop, which include the strategies and the game, even the weapons get upgraded. Everything's changing. If we don't acknowledge that, the teams that do acknowledge it and change their mindset with it and always look to adapt and always look to be encouraging to others and try to be generally nice people or just produce positive vibes, they'll be here in a year. The teams that do not, I'm telling you right now, this is a warning. This is my warning shot. You won't be here. Your team will not be competitive because you mentally won't be able to handle it. How many times have you seen somebody get burnout from work, right? Burnout. I would argue a lot of these players we just watched No Loot Gaming burned out. It hasn't even started. You think this is tough?
Right. Yeah.
There's 20, 25 teams that are competitive. We're just starting. Where the prize money is just starting. So that's my encouragement. If people don't get, taking this seriously, if they don't really look at the landscape and don't change, I'm very confident that you won't be able to handle the stresses that come when every prize pool is $200,000 or above,
Yeah, there's a team that I'm like trialing on, so I can't say which one, but one of their players is getting pretty burnt out too, and we're like looking for a replacement right now, right? And like you said, it's just the beginning, right? Like this isn't in the leagues of, I mean, can you imagine LOL players? Like, how burnt out could they be? You know what I mean? It's like we're not even close to the level of practice level that they.
No,
that's
and again,
I don't know what.
That's the other thing. And that's the last thing, and that's one more thing I can tell people to do is practice like you did to get here. There's a lot of players right now that think they've made it, quote unquote, and so they're putting in 3 hours a day. And come on, I mean, what business or what work can you produce off 3 hours a day? Like that's not sustainable long term. You will be beaten by some other unknown team right now that's putting in 12 hours a day as a unit. Like you're going to lose for sure.
Yeah.
And so again, control what you can control. You can control work ethic. You can control practice. You can control, even to some degree, your motivation and intensity for the love of the game. And again, the complaining on Twitter for sure is completely controllable. And I will be the broken record until it changes. I'm not going to change what I think is the truth. I'm not going to tone down and I'm being insensitive because a lot of teams just didn't qualify for PGI, and so everybody's mad, and I'm out here bragging. Like, it's none of the above. I'm doing my thing, and again, I'm only doing things to help people. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I think maybe we should just leave it at that.
I agree, bro. And to wrap up, I appreciate the conversation. I hope you found that it was valuable, and I was able to kind of just give some good insight and at least create conversations. And so if it's different ways you haven't thought about it before, or anybody listening, that's just kind of the goal. Just create conversations, and I would encourage everybody to definitely follow you on your social media, and follow this YouTube series. And maybe you could tell them if you're going to keep it on YouTube, if you have plans to do different platforms. Like I'd be interested to hear that. Like, what's next for your little Inside the Circle? Because this thing, I think has big potential. I'm a big fan already.
Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it. I honestly just do this for fun in my spare time, right? So I don't really have any, big plans or anything, but we'll see how stuff goes. That's basically what I'm thinking. For now, it's just going to stay on YouTube. It's just going to stay a little thing. But,
good.
I mean, if it grows and, if my channel grows and more people really want to see this on different platforms, then I always ask for feedback, right? So people want to see this on different platforms, and enough people are interested in it, then I'll look into it for sure.
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate my time here. I thought it was a very productive conversation.
Thanks for reaching out to me too, by the way.
Dude, I'm telling you, I try to hustle, man. Like it doesn't do me any favors if I'm the only one that just tweets to myself. Like I'm trying to reach out and network. And again, this goes for anybody that's listening. If you're a professional player, if you're a coach, if you're a fan, like reach out to both of us on Twitter, like DM, right? Just give feedback. Like I don't. There's nothing wrong with it. It takes you 10 seconds, and so if there's a pro that hates what I said or thinks I'm completely wrong, like I'm mature enough not to have the conversation. I'm not going to be somebody that's going to start arguments. Like I would encourage the conversation. So you can feel free to DM us on Twitter. It's Ramsden Mental Fitness or at Ramsden MF at Ramsden MF.
I'll put it in the description.
Perfect, man. That works.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably speak for both of us when I say we probably love feedback on everything we do because it helps us get better, right?
Yep, absolutely it does.
Yeah, and when I say feedback, I mean something like, I took the criticism from my first video that I said things maybe a tad too vitriolically, and I said, okay, well maybe I'll tone down my language, maybe not curse as much in the future if I'm doing those type of videos. Stuff like saying, making a dry ass 24-minute bash video, what the WTF Moses, is probably not a great, constructive criticism.
No.
Just throwing that one out there.
Well, you're right. At the end of the day, we're not going to listen to feedback.
So I'm not exactly sure how he knows it's a bash video. Maybe he can read my mind or something.
Well, man, because everybody thinks they're experts. And again, that's part of the entitlement. I mean, I think he plays a tiny bit, but I see him mostly as casting, and I enjoy his casting. I think he's a good caster. But once you start getting into that realm. Yeah, but if you start getting I agree with you 100%, dude. You start getting into that realm of not wanting to hear other people's opinions, but you're very opinionated and throwing things out on Twitter all the time. Now we're creating a conversation, again, that's not productive because you're essentially dictating that people should only listen to you and that you're not a fan if they disagree. And to me, I can actually disagree with somebody and have a really nice conversation. And at the end of the day, just like you did, not take away any feedback that's going to be productive for my behavior. Like just because you say something doesn't mean the person has to listen and has to change. And that's something that I want to get across too is be okay if you give feedback or opinions or if you have a conversation. Guess what? The other person might not agree and might not listen. And that's, again, the whole point of communicating with the PUBG Corp is you have to just acknowledge it. Like they don't need to listen to you, right? Like they're making money off the game. It's their game. They're making money. And understand that it impacts your ability to make money, but guess what? It's their call. So, big fan of feedback and a big fan of just kind of being humble at the same time.
Yep, same. All right, man. Thanks for coming on again. Nice to talk with you. It was really interesting. Sounds good, man.
All right, man. Look forward to engaging with everybody on Twitter. See ya.
Yeah, same. Later.